Good morning or afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our June 25th SafetyChain Technology Series Tech Talk. And today's topic, understanding, managing, and reducing the cost of quality, or the economics of quality, with our very special guest speaker, Lamont Rumbers. I'll be telling you a little bit more about him in just a moment. I'm Barbara Levin with SafetyChain. I'll be your host today. Before we begin, let me give you just a few housekeeping announcements. Our platform for today's event is WebEx. Should you require any technical support, you can call their hotline directly at 877-509-3239. Again, 877-509-3239. The recording link and a PDF of the slides will be sent to all registrants by close of business on Monday. You'll get an email from us with that. We will be taking questions for our guest speaker at the end of our session, and we'll show you how to enter those questions at that time. For your privacy, you can see the names of our panelists and your name, but not the names of the other attendees. We have a very high level and very informative agenda for you today. First, we're going to introduce Lamont, who's going to speak about quality, understanding, managing, and reducing the quality, and introducing a concept I'm very excited for him to share with you on the economics of quality. We'll turn it back to me. I'm going to give you a very short look at SafetyChain's quality management solutions, just tell you a little bit about that. We're going to take all of your questions. And then for those of you who would like to stay at the end of the formal presentation, we will make available for you a brief demonstration of SafetyChain's quality management automation solutions. And we'll do that after the Q&A, and I hope that many of you can stay for that. With that, I'm really excited to introduce Lamont Rumbers. Lamont is the president and founder of Fully Integrated Quality Solutions. Recently was the senior director of quality for Sam's Club. I was at a share group, a quality share group near Chicago a couple of months ago. Lamont was the guest speaker, and I was just so impressed with his vision and his insight into food quality and all of the issues and challenges surrounding it and what we could do about it. That I always tell him that I stalked him, but really wanted him to come and speak at our series, so we're so excited that he can join us today. Also with us today is Dave Detweiler. Dave is the Director of Solutions Consulting for SafetyChain, and Dave will be doing that demo at the end of the formal presentations for those of you who are able to stay with us. With that, I'm going to introduce Lamont. We're going to turn it over to him. So Lamont, first I'd like to say welcome to today's Tech Talk. We're so glad you were able to join us. You know, I hadn't heard people really speak about the economics of quality before, and I really enjoyed when we were together at that conference how you spoke to this. So we're turning it over to you, and perhaps you can kind of kick us off with sharing your insight on this concept of the economics of quality. So welcome, and it's all yours.
Okay, well, thank you, Barb. I certainly appreciate that. And when I look about and I talk about the economics of quality, and I think about the cost of quality, the reason I use the economics of quality because cost, it seems so broad, it can potentially be negative and limiting. But when you think about all the things we do, it has an economic or business impact. And so I thought it was fairer, it was better to think about it in a broader sense. So that's why I call it the economics of quality, because it does talk about risk, benefits, and certainly there's a cost component. But having said that, so we start looking at this. Let me tell you what we're not doing. We're not talking about cost saving. We're not going to go through the details around the cost of quality appraisal, preventive costs, et cetera, things like that. We're going to talk about like what are the things that we need to do, how we get them done. Because at the end of the day, I believe that the folks on the call, on the webinar here, we understand that, we have that information, but maybe I can help with some strategies about how you can implement or execute. So when I started, I thought, well, if we did a really good job, the success would mean that at the end of this presentation, this would absolutely blow your mind. And then I woke up real and thought I got carried away. So let's call that and say that the performance of success will be if we can walk away thinking differently about the economics of quality, perhaps a better approach or a different approach and some insight. But again, not about cost. It's going to be more talking about a more holistic approach or strategy across your entire value chain. Not so narrow in your plant or in your particular department, but a broader approach. And we'll talk about the value of doing it that way. Thinking about being business relevant, having a seat at the table. So when we do that, in the quality group, we touch a lot of things. So we're very broad, but sometimes we are not business relevant in terms of the things that we do. We're going to talk about how we do that. We're also going to think about change. I call it change agency. Now, to tell you the truth, when you start looking at that, it does require vision and courage. Courage because you're going to start looking at people, perhaps challenging them to think differently, and sometimes people get a little afraid because you think you're in their space, and change is intimidating for people. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, but you have to have a little courage and have to have a little vision. Because at the end of the day, what the EOQ, I call it, is about capturing the benefits / costs of doing the right things the right way. That's how I summarize it, okay? So I'm trying to move forward, Barb.
If you just click anywhere on your, anywhere on your page, you should be able to page down. And if that's not working, Jill, maybe you can forward the slide down. There you go.
Okay, now it moved. Okay.
There you go.
So let's start. We're going to move quickly, in the time that we have. But first thing you do when you're talking about the cost of quality economics, first thing you have to really define it. And I try to define it in simple ways, as you can see here. So from a design, process, and performance quality. Design is typically where we play in most places about, well, do we get the right product for our customer, our consumer, et cetera? Do we design it to meet their needs? And that's an important element of it. But then the process, you've got to have that right as well. Those are all those things that we do to execute and make it happen, whether it be how we order, logistics, all of those things, not just how we manufacture the product. Policies and procedures, it's all there. It's a holistic approach, but you're looking at the process quality piece. And then at the end of the day, when you finish and you do all those things, you have to know that you hit the mark. And what do you do? And then you have a lot of data and information that's somewhat confusing, but you've got to have that and shared expectations about what do you mean. So at the end of the day, did you hit the mark, okay? Now, if you define it in a way that's inconsistent with your customer or your business, that's going to be a problem because it's not going to matter what you say or do if you can't hit that mark. But if you don't hit it, you wind up doing things that are non-value added, activities that don't drive much business, don't drive improve quality. So for example, when you look at this, often retailers manufacturers go to retailers and they say, I've got this great quality product. Well, they're really talking about features and not performance. And sometimes when performance comes up, it's because, well, your sales are up. However, when my sales are down, the manufacturer doesn't come back and say, my quality stinks because your sales are down. No, they don't do that. So in terms of how we just look at it, we've got to define it beyond product features, and that's really going to be important. However, in your organization, if you find that you do it that way, that it's by features only, then I'm telling you, you probably have a gold mine of opportunity where you can benefit your organization. Just focus on the process, because remember, when you look at this, we fix processes. We typically don't fix products, but that's how you want to look at it, defining quality in the various areas, because what it's going to lead to is how you're going to measure it in a way that's meaningful and tangible to your business. So, the right quality metrics, okay? You get that? So, you got to look at, what do you need to know? What do you do when you know it? Once you know it, all those kinds of things, and impact on your business. You start kind of narrowing down because there's so many things, there's so many dimensions of quality, so much complexity between manufacturing that you've got to be able to nail it down into something that makes sense for you. Otherwise, it's just a broad brush of just whatever is there and kind of like data to nowhere. Understanding that data versus information, we'll go a little more into that, but if you have too much, you can't see the opportunity because you may not have the resources, may be hidden. Or if you have too little, you still don't understand it and it still may be hidden. And then predictive measures. So what's important about predictive measures are things that you see. Well, if you combine predictive measures with technology, when you do that, you get the benefit, and some of you, and by the way, what I'm talking about now, one man's opinion, we're free to disagree. But again, for predictive measures combined with technology, you get the benefit of failing fast and failing early. Now, why do you want to do that? Because it's cheaper that way. So if I can do all those things and understand my product and process, and I can make corrections before it's so costly, that is a benefit. That's part of the economics that we're talking about. And of course, at the end of the day, you need to validate it. What is the true story? What is the true picture that is impactful, that tells you what is actually going on? And then you look at those, and those are the right measures. If you look off to the right, I kind of threw some things together to kind of give you an idea of what data may look like. There's not quite information, but we're going to get to that in a moment. So there needs to be a way, when you start looking at data, well, where does it come from? How do I look at this? So I always use the term your quality risk universe. And that's where everything comes together about your process, your product, how you do business, how you look at that. And I just gave you some examples how you might put it there. Some of it, whether it be GSP compliance, or third-party inspection, or your complaint, or corrective action process, et cetera. But this is where you can look at how your programs and everything comes together and how things really work. It also gives you an opportunity to see where you can focus on some prevention, where you can prevent failure. But I guess just as important, you can look at that and you can understand where your data information streams come from, so you can look at what could or should be measured. Now, I'm going to give you an example. And most of you can look at this because I'm going to challenge in some ways how we may think of some things. If you think about an audit, most of you on the phone, you'll have the GSSI audit. Now, I'm not picking on GSSI, but I'm going to use it as an example. From an economics of quality standpoint, there's a business proposition here. If you do well on the audit, you pass, what happens? The company gets more business because many of your retailers, your customers are requiring that. You may require it of your suppliers, but you get more business, right? So that's one component. The other component, a realization, is better compliance or regulatory compliance. That's good for your business. Okay, so I think we can agree on that. But beyond that, if I pass this audit, what is the measure that says my product has a higher quality based on what set of attributes? By passing that audit, what do I see in my product that is higher quality or food safe? What do I see? What does that measure? Well, typically we're not necessarily looking at that, but I would look at that and say, how is that impacting? Now, going down a little further from an economic standpoint, you might go and you may say, because what happens in preparing for these audits, many of you may spend weeks preparing for that audit. So here's the potential impact as I look at it, in terms of value-added activities, et cetera. If you're spending weeks preparing for an audit, that means someone is doing something other than what they were doing, let's say, before the audit was coming. So either those activities that they were performing before are not value-added, or they split that time and now they're trying to do that job plus prepare for the audit. If they're doing that, are you now at risk of having failure because they're out of bandwidth? They really can't see the whole thing. And the point of that, just the quick story, is that you start looking at things. You can say, I'm going to be audit ready. But if you start looking at the things that you do, should I be doing those things? If I place myself at risk, if I fail, doesn't that impact it? And it forces you to begin to challenge how you're thinking of things. Because we always say we want to be audit ready. And if we are, then that's great. Then we know that we are not doing those things. And the work that happens is you're inconvenienced when the auditor comes, and that is the time. But if we just approach it to pass the audit, we may lose sight of the overall process. And again, when I look at the economics of quality, it is a holistic thing. It is not a series of one thing. It is looking at the entire process. And the reason you do it that way, because one small opportunity may not be big enough or significant enough for someone to go along with you, but when you put them all together strategically or holistically, you may have an opportunity to really impact your organization. So we do the audit, but as we get ready, what are the opportunities? What are those activities that we undertake to make that work? So that's why you want to look at your quality risk universe, because it gives you an opportunity to see more broadly what you're up against. So as you start looking at data and information, so we start getting that. You know, we talk about how we design quality and whatnot. So let's agree, hopefully we agree on something. First of all, data is not information until it's known and absorbed by someone. Otherwise, it's just out there. Information is not knowledge until it's interpreted and visible and communicated to something. You have to be able to do that someone has to do something with it. However, knowledge is not power until it is applied. So when we think about like the cost of quality, the economics of quality, we all know the rules, we all know the steps, we all know these things, but today the game is won by those who understand how to execute, those who know how to get it, how to apply it. That's where we want to be, because I can't teach you those other things because it's right out there, but it is the application of that knowledge is where you go, and that's what we're going to talk about. Well, how do you actually kind of get there? Well, let's look at that. So this, everybody has seen this. Everybody's seen this iceberg chart, right? So everybody raise your hands if you've seen it. Okay. For those of you that went in Texas that didn't raise your hand, we're going to talk later. But we've all seen that, okay? So what's the big deal? Okay, you say to yourself, Lamont, I've seen that. What are you talking about? Well, here's what we're going to talk about. If you look on the right side, you can see some of the things traditional, et cetera. Here's what happens so often I see, we take these one at a time and we miss it. So we have the information, but we don't look at this thing holistically. It is one initiative, one small initiative, one thing at a time. The game is the thing what we want to do is we want to put it all together. We can't do it piecemeal. And one of the reasons that we struggle with it, when we look at these things, even though we've seen it for years, a lot of times we can't do it because we don't have the mechanism. Our accounting departments don't have buckets for it, or we say we don't have time, or when we do have time, it's not big enough because we look at it so small. So what you want to do is look at it as a whole and not in pieces. Because again, I look at, and I'm saying the entire value chain, that's everything that we do. That could be, again, how you order, your inventory, how you deal with your suppliers, how you deal with your customers, et cetera. Those things that you say, and even the programs that you put in place are all well-intended, but they may negatively impact your bottom line. They may negatively impact your ability to execute. Because at the end of the day, what you're going to do is to say, some things you've always been doing, I'm going to show you leadership of my company. I'm going to show you that we're not doing cost savings. I'm going to show you the benefits when we do things right. And that's the opportunity. That puts you on their side, right? So let's go forward again. Great, Lamont, we agree with you, but here's the deal. Nothing ever happens until you get buy-in, because we all know that in order to do the things that we do, most of the times the people that need to do it don't report to us. We get it. So you have to look and say, what is your compelling story? You got to have that. You got to get your seat at the table. You got to have that story. I'm going to show you something. Okay? You see that? I want you to look at that. I'm going to give you a few more seconds to look at that and remember that. Then I'm going to take it away. Then I'm going to tell you a story, then we're going to come back to that. And we're going to see how consistent I am with my story. All right, you had enough? The person in Texas, you need to catch up with everybody. I think you're there. All right, it's gone away. Here's the story. Okay, true story, but I'm going to leave out some of the names to protect the innocent and myself. Looking at this, had an idea, and I'm going to go fast, so keep up with me. Had an idea, talked to my boss. Hey, I think that we can do a lot improving our quality of our product while at the same time showing the organization the benefits of it and perhaps fund other programs. My boss says, yes, but we don't have any money. I know, I got that. We can do this. He says, okay, go forward. I partnered with a third party. Said, I need you to do this. We're going to build this because I think we can put a program together, work with suppliers, and reduce our costs and save a lot of money and improve our profit. They say yes. And a great partner, they say yes. I go to finance. Hey, I need you to do this for me. I need you to understand here's the things that we're doing. The reason I grab finance is because no matter what number I put in front of anybody on the executive team, it's not going to matter unless finance says yes. Yes, we are in agreement. Finance goes. Then next I go to one of the VPs in a certain area and I say, if I could do this for you, would you be on board? They say yes. So now I've got someone on board. I've got finance. I've got my boss. I have someone on board. All right, now we put together a program. Sit down one day with the CEO of the company. We're going to call this CEO, who are going to be interchanged, male and female. We're going to call this CEO C. Sit down with C and some of her leadership team, and I said, C, you hired me to do this quality thing. That's great. But I can find opportunities to improve your quality and keep your costs low. I can do all these things if you just agree. My boss is in the room, and he's looking at me because he knows what I'm about to say, and he's thinking, oh, God, if he says this and it goes soft, we're both going to be on the street. We're going to be fired. What he didn't know was I had already arranged to have another job. I was flipping burgers, and this didn't work out, so I was okay. So we take the chance. I say, C. I go back to this chart here. I go back here, and I show C this chart, the iceberg chart that you see, and I say, here's an opportunity. Well, a company our size is about $11 billion worth of waste. And she looks at me and her leadership team, and they're looking puzzled. Say, well, so what? I then say, and here was the clincher. Company our size, $11.2 billion worth of waste. Do you realize that we have built temples to inefficiency? We have plans for failure on a massive scale. They're called the return center. And C and her leadership team looked at me. I looked at my boss. C and her leadership team smiled, and they basically said, oh, yes, he got it. We agree. So this is something different. Fast forward, we proved the concept. I had a brilliant person, one of the directors working for me. She was just brilliant, working with a third-party team, working with suppliers. We got it done. For 2 suppliers, proof of concept, over $11 million in opportunities discovered. Sit back with the leadership team. They're all excited about it. We move forward, okay? Now, let's go back. Gaining buy-in. The first thing is, can I get aligned philosophy? Can I get somebody to say yes? Answer was yes. Then I need a sponsor. That was at VP, but that was also finance. When you get a sponsor, the goal is, can I turn them into apostles so that they're preaching the gospel for me? Are they going forward and speaking about this because I can't do it by myself? If their speaking is beyond quality, it becomes a business process. Key apostle is always going to be finance because no matter what, when it comes down to understanding the numbers and they have the ears of the executive team, you can get it done. So again, quality is a business process. We start looking at that, looking at the entire value stream. That's what we did to look at the opportunity and change management. Remember about change. If you didn't know this before, it's really change agency. And that's really about influence. I told you about courage before. But one thing that sometimes people get stuck on is we have to get 100% buy-in. So let me tell you now, if that's your goal, 100% buy-in, stop, because it's not going to happen. In fact, a family of 5 can't even agree on dinner, what you're going to have for dinner. So if you think you're going to get an organization 100% buy-in, no. What you want is to get enough people, get that sponsor, to get enough, and then keep going and building momentum about your program. And that part, that will work. But it's not about instilling a culture of quality, because in fact, I'm not even sure I'm not necessarily aligned with that, because we don't say a culture of finance, a culture of engineering. I'm talking about a business process. So if I were actually looking at it, if I'm going to do it, and again, we can disagree, but I think it's more important to have a culture of showing benefits, of doing the right things the right way and for the right reason. I think everybody can get behind that, and that piece is important to me. So that's how I may look at it, but those are the things that are important that I think we ought to be looking at. So gain the buy-in. That's going to be extremely important. And when you do that, you lead your organization, you lead the business to the opportunity. You're the expert. I had one executive tell me one time, I was looking at, asking her questions about doing some things, and she stopped me and said, well, stop. You're the expert. You tell us. And then we'll start giving you questions and tell you how we need things that you tell us. Because if you don't lead them to the opportunity, you're going to get in a cost savings trap, because you know many of you have been in a situation where the business has been tough, and then the business wants money because it's important. We got to hold off on this. We can't travel, et cetera. And they start turning you upside down to get money. But if you look at it and say look at cost savings, then you're going to miss the opportunity to improve your process, and it's going to be a conflict of interest for you. So think about it as getting ahead of it, getting the buy-in, and getting a seat at the table. That's important to be business relevant, not to be just because we're a technical function that you shut it off to the side and only called upon when needed or when the crisis occurs or someone has a technical question. Be a part of the business. That way, you can actually influence the economic cost of quality for your organization. But as with anything else, there are things that get in the way of our success and our roadblocks, right? That's what they're there. So one of the things that gets in the way is really we take a tactical approach. And when you take a tactical approach, a series of one-offs, that seems like a lot of work for people. And there's too many things for people to get their arms around. So make it holistic, make it more strategic, and look at the entire process for your opportunities to help improve your product while at the same time improving your process, and then delivering, showing the benefits of those improvements to the organization so they go along with you. But if you don't have an alignment, an agreement in terms of what our understanding of quality is, so I know a number of you have had situations where you've had to pull product off the shelf, perfectly good product, because it didn't meet your customer's expectations because you were not aligned. And if you're in the room with me, many of you would say yes, so I take that because I can see some of you, and you're saying yes, and I agree. One of the things that also gets in your way, too many metrics, too many. These bridges or data to nowhere. We are cherry picking, and I'm going to start using this term one day, cherry picking from a massive ambivalent data. We just grab data. And you know how we often talk about the data, the things that you're doing, and if you stop doing it, nobody ever asks you, or no one ever questions it. That same thing happens with data. We just start grabbing things and someone says, here's what we have, and we continue doing it because we've always done it. There's an opportunity there. But what gets into it also is, quite frankly, it is outside of what is traditionally measured. We don't do this. Accounting, finance, they don't have a bucket for it. You have a lot of weight, you have a lot of opportunity, but you can't get to it because it's all meshed up together. And you can't figure out what's what. Well, if you look at it, that might be an opportunity. When you find the things that you can't find answers to, that might be an opportunity for you, okay? And then you look at the lack of speed and the visibility of results. If it takes too long and no one can see it, how are you going to move it forward? So again, this is really about execution and showing the benefits. It's not about really, do you know the technical aspect of these things, whether you are a black belt, whether you're a student of the great quality pioneers, none of that's going to matter if you can't get it in front of the executives, in front of the business to get permission to move forward and to put them on the team and be part of that team. It will not matter. You can have all that knowledge in the world. It will not matter if you can apply it. And when you get business relevance, that allows you, they give you permission to apply it. And if you have a lack of sponsors, if no one's on the team, how can you get it done? And if you try to do it, it's just because of the quality function, well, we all know how well that's working, and it doesn't work well all the time, okay? So how many of you are still with me? So we have 2 people left? Okay. So by the way, you guys, you realize I don't know, I can't see you, right? So I'm just talking and hoping you're still there. So if you take technology, so it can play a significant role, but how? But how? That's the question. So some of this you know, and some of this I hope I can help you with. So the role that automation plays, well, when you think about this, it allows you to see what you could not in a way that you did not. That's important. That is extremely important. So it almost is like if you're building a process, giving a chance to challenge those new processes, but you can see it. Remember I told you before about failing early and failing fast? Well, you can see that there, and perhaps you can save yourself a whole lot of pain and trouble. It allows you to be better, faster, stronger with your communications and your decisions. Again, if I want to know something, if I want the organization to do something, I need to give them there because, quite frankly, if change takes too long, and we talk about the cost of quality or ELQ, if it takes too long, no one can see it, it will lose momentum and it will die an ugly death. It may be slow, but it'll be ugly. And you're going to have opportunity to make the complex simple. That's important. But not so simple that anyone can do it or you can't get anything done. So let's say we have a lot of high-paid people around, and I think that they can handle 3, 4-syllable words if it improves our product, process, and our economics. I think it's possible. And then automation helps make things simple and consistent, a repository. So the single source of the truth, we talk about that a lot, right? But when you think about this in single source of truth and this repository with all this great knowledge that is applied can be, it's here where all falsehoods, fairy tales, and false assumptions will go to die because you have it right there. But what you assume, you don't have to assume anymore. If you do it right, it's right there, okay? And, of course, the need for fewer resources. However, you need to have the right resources and have the right knowledge and talent level that can apply the data, the information, or the knowledge that you have acquired. You need to be able to do that. So when we start talking about the prevention cost of or even the entire process, remember, you have to be able to action that. You have to make that visible and has to resonate. Get your seat at the table. And part of that, when you can say, I don't need as many resources, but I do need resources because you know what? This is none of this is free, and there is an opportunity here. And sometimes in economics of quality, you're going to have to add in order to subtract or prevent that failure or realize a better opportunity. But you can make that case. And of course, you have the waste reduction and failure reduction. Great, that makes sense. But the benefits of that, and here is the clincher. When it's done right and it's done holistically, you can reduce the cost of goods. On the manufacturing side, if you reduce the cost of goods, but you can increase your margin if you don't pass it along to your customer, but we know you'll pass it along. So you can reduce the cost of goods. When you do this, the ability to fund other programs. Remember the story I told you about with the CEOC and getting that buy-in? Well, at the end of it, with that team and the third party, the folks that are coming to help develop that, and my brilliant director and her incredible influence skills, when they spoke to the supplier, one of the supplier's comments was, we can use that to fund other programs. So the things that you guys want, we can now basically find the money for that. That is the benefit. That is the benefit, and everybody wins. Everybody wins when we can do it that way. You can see it all. Right there, that's the benefit of technology. You put it all together, that's the benefit. Now, at the end of the day, you've got to put it all together, and that becomes a marriage of your talent, the knowledge that you have to apply, the partnership, and technology. You put them all together, and you can realize the true value in the economics of quality. But again, it is strategic, it is holistic, it does require courage, it does require knowledge so that you can apply it. And it basically, many of the things that you're currently doing, you're missing the opportunity because you're not showing the benefit of the good work that you're currently doing. I suggest to you that you put it down on paper. Some of it's not that hard to do, and you grab finance or accounting, partner with them, and you can have a tremendous impact in the cost of quality. Now, I don't know if anybody's minds were blown that I hope to do, but if the one is blown, I know all about them so we can put you back together. But with that, Barb, I'll turn it over to you.
Lamont, thank you so much. I want to clap. And people were, you know, there's a little icon that lets people raise their hands, and people were raising their hands. And so we're going to come back to you in just a moment here. What we're going to do now is I'm going to take us out of full screen. I'm going to spend just a couple of minutes because I know that we've got a lot of questions for Lamont. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about how SafetyChain can help you with quality management automation solutions. While we're doing that, this is a fabulous time for you to put your questions in that you'd like to send to Lamont. All of you right now should be seeing at the bottom of your screen a Q&A tab. Simply enter your question in that tab and hit send, and while we get those queued up, we will, come back to Lamont in just a moment. So let me just give you a little bit of information about how we can help you with some of the technology benefits that Lamont mentioned. SafetyChain for Food is here at SafetyChain, our Food Safety Chain Management Solution. This is a single dedicated platform for food safety and quality assurance across your entire value chain. We help you automate for what comes in, what you're doing with it, and what goes out. There are 4 main modules: supplier compliance, food safety management, food quality management, which is what we've been speaking about today, regulatory and GFSI management, and then we've got a suite of mobile applications which provide anywhere, anytime data collection and CAPA across the entire platform. When it comes to quality, Lamont really did a fabulous job of speaking about some of the pain points and challenges that we have when we're trying to do all of this manually. Just a few things, like managing your customer quality specs, reducing rework and waste, responding to customer audits, lack of those predictive operational metrics, and being data rich and information poor, not having the right data in the right format for you to really be able to make effective continuous improvements. SafetyChain quality management can help you solve some of these challenges by giving you the ability to analyze quality data in real time with automated nonconformance alerts. Automate CAPA generation and documentation, again, to reduce the rework and the waste. To give you accurate, accessible, and actionable data from a central repository of data so that you can pull the right metrics to help you make continuous improvements and reduce your cost of quality. With that, the other thing I wanted to say really is one of the things that we are very proud of here at SafetyChain is that these solutions are designed to be preventive versus reactive. You can think of this as a safety and quality smoke alarm in the cloud, if you will, really designed to not just get you the information you need, but get the right information to the right people at the earliest point possible so that you can catch problems before they start versus reactively trying to figure out where the problem started, when it's a little too late, and then figure out what it's going to cost to repair the damage. When we're finished with our Q&A, we're going to be going to Dave Detweiler for those of you who would like to stay on and look at our demonstration of SafetyChain's quality management. So with that, we want to get right back to questions for Lamont. So again, if you've got questions, please put them on the bottom and then hit send. And I see a few that have come in. Lamont, I've got a question here from Jonathan. And Jonathan says, we are a major retailer. How much or little should we rely on our suppliers to ensure the quality of the products we put on our shelves? Second part to that question, are COAs or audit certificates such as GFSI certificates enough?
Okay. So if you look at should you rely on your supplier, well, you have to rely on your supplier. If you don't trust that supplier, you need another supplier. But when you rely on that supplier, what you can do, what is often missing is really have you agreed upon what performance looks like, what data are you sharing, that so it's the supplier's responsibility to demonstrate to you quality and food safety of their product. But you have to rely on them. I think from the retailer standpoint, you have to ask better questions. You need to be more interested and more invasive in their process, and they need to provide you information that proves that the product meets your expectations. So that's one. And the other, the question, if I understood it, are certifications and COAs enough? No, I don't believe that they are. So in some cases, so we'll look at, for instance, a certificate of analysis. And what sometimes we forget is we're talking about other manufacturers. So we know we have issues in our facilities. We're not perfect, and we know when we have data, we put some things down. We're not perfect, as I mentioned. But yet we then take a certificate of analysis, and oftentimes we don't even know what their certificate of analysis is for. Is it for the lot? Do they do it every hour? Is it a composite? We don't know, so that's not enough. The other part, when you talk about the other certifications, it's really, if someone can tell me one audit, one certification, one anything that meets all my needs, I'll go to bed happy, but I don't think that's out there. So it can't. So what you have to look at is demonstration of performance, looking at the suppliers or the overall process and its adequacy or its ability to understand when it is going to fail or about to fail. So it is not enough to be certified. We're certified all over the world, but yet we seem to have lots of failures. So that's clearly not enough.
Okay, great. Thank you. We have a question from Karen who's asking, can you elaborate a little bit more on the concept of business relevance versus cost only for gaining buy-in for change?
So business relevance is basically looking at making your statement about your value to the business. And so that value is you're looking at, so first of all, the business understands cost. But if you start looking at the things that you do that actually impact cost and the benefit, but the benefit can also be reputational. Even it can be those things that we may have trouble measuring, but that's relevant. And so when you make that case to the business that says that this is important, here's why you should listen, here's what this means to you, and you're making it their idea, you're making it resonate with them because you're becoming a part of how they can see you supporting them. And sometimes being business relevant means being their eyes and ears to show them what's going on in their process. So the cost isn't always necessarily a part of it, but it may not always be a part, but it is a big part because at the end of the day, they're not nonprofits, so they want to see that, and you do a lot of great work, so why not show the financial benefit as well as reputational and otherwise?
Great, that's good insight. It's an interesting question here coming in from Ron. At our organization, when it comes to safety versus quality, it seems that safety always gets the dollars first. How do you explain the importance of quality as what builds versus can kill your brand? We've discussed this, right?
So when you look at it, so it's almost what I find is very interesting is food safety has hijacked the initiative. It's important, but it's hijacked the initiative. When we look at manufacturing facilities, the dimensions of quality are so much more complex. I'm just talking manufacturing facilities now. So much more complex than food safety. And the people who are doing the job, they're doing more quality checks and whatnot than they're doing food safety. So I think what we ought to be doing is showing that if I have a strong quality program, then I will have a strong food safety program. In other words, if my quality program is poor, like why do I think when the same people managing my quality, why do I think that they're going to do something really special because it's food safety and that person on the line, that person who's responsible for it, do we really think that they're thinking about that 24 hours a day? No, they're thinking about their bad kids, their ratty husband, and all of these other things. So it's going to be about the process. If you put it in place and you have quality, and in most manufacturing facilities, food safety is a subset of quality to start with, so we've done it backwards. We have a better quality system, we will have a better food safety system. The reverse isn't necessarily true because it's not as complex on the manufacturing level.
Great insight. I'm looking to scroll, and I think that might have been, I don't see any other additional questions, but we're on to the next point anyhow. Lamont, I feel the same way that I did when I saw you speak in Chicago. Very, very insightful, and, you know, so pleased that you were able to join us, and thank you so much. What we're going to do now is give you a little bit, if I can page down my side, I'm going to give you some information here. Again, for today's session, a PDF of these slides and a link to the recording will be emailed by, let's see, one said Monday, one said tomorrow. So either tomorrow or Monday, folks. For more information on SafetyChain, simply info@SafetyChain. If you'd like to chat with Lamont, learn more about his services, or just, you know, or continue the conversation, you can see his email, lrumbers@FIQS Solutions, one S in there, 904-305-9799. When you get your copy of your email, the email that has your slides and link to the recording, we'll also make sure Lamont's contact is in there for you. We've got some great upcoming tech talks. In August, we're going to be talking about HACCP and HARPC. In October, we're going to be speaking about audits. Yes, you can be audit ready all the time so that audits aren't distracting you from the other value-added work that you're doing, as Lamont mentioned earlier. Always feel free to visit us at SafetyChain.com. We've got all kinds of great white papers and briefs, archives of other webinars, lots of great information there for you. With that, again, we'd like to thank you so much for joining us, Lamont. And now, for those of you who can stay on, we're very excited to introduce Dave Detweiler. Dave is our Head Solutions Consultant here at SafetyChain. And Dave is going to show you a short demo of some of the highlights of the way that SafetyChain can help you automate food quality management. If you've got questions for Dave, and Lamont's going to be with us too, if you're sitting there thinking, wow, I wish I'd asked him that, you can put those in. We'll come back and do a little Q&A when that's over. Dave, I can see your screen, so you're ready to go.
Thanks, Barbara. So thanks, everybody, for sticking on. I see some of you actually hanging around here for the demonstration. And what I was going to do is just spend the next 15 minutes and give you a quick overview of the SafetyChain platform, hopefully hitting on some specific examples around cost of quality, right? I know many of you, I see the list here of folks online. I don't know that I'm going to have a specific example for each of you, but hopefully a couple of these examples will be generic enough that you'll see what we're trying to get to here. First and foremost, just a couple, I think Barbara likes to use the term housekeeping tips. The SafetyChain solution is actually software as a service, so it's accessible anywhere you have internet access, right? The idea that this solution is deployed globally today. This helps out a lot of organizations. I see a lot of you on the phone here that have different locations, different facilities, different stores. Think about the idea that each of these stores or facilities can have an access point into this system, allowing some of you at the corporate level to see a roll-up of all of this data, of all of this information. And what I'm going to do is walk through a couple examples here today using this live demonstration site. But it's important to note that the system is completely rules and roles based. So today we focus a lot on quality, and we're going to talk about quality and the idea that an individual coming into the system may just see specific quality information or attributes specifically about a product, right? As I logged in there, you saw that that individual had much less access to the system than I myself do as I log back in here as a super user, as a power admin within the solution. Now, what we talk about a lot of times is cost of quality, and we use the term DRIP, right? Data rich, information poor. Well, many of you are capturing this data today. You're capturing it in pen and paper. You're capturing it on an Excel spreadsheet. You're capturing some of the data in a database, some of the data on a spreadsheet, and some of the data on pieces of paper, and you can never pull it together efficiently, right, or quickly. Speed to business, that access to information. So we're going to hit on a couple of those points as I go through this. One main thing to point out about the SafetyChain application, not only is it rules and roles based, but it also allows end users to actually manipulate their home page, right? So I'm showing you a home page here that's very compliance-centric, right? I have some recent corrective actions here on my home page, or maybe even some specific checks that I'm doing over here on the right side, right? My flour analysis we're going to talk about, or flavor and color analysis that's going on. The idea here is this home page, for some of you say, well, that doesn't look like a chart that I want to see. Well, how about if you had a different homepage, something that looked more like this, where you're starting to talk about X bar charts and specific quality attributes that are coming in. You can see this is a weight check, and it might go against upper control limits or lower specification limits, right? The idea that as you have a system and you start to capture this data real time, this data can be updated onto home pages. It can be updated on screens in the manufacturing facility. Can be updated for that quick consumption of now information, right? So you have the data already. Let's make it information. Let's make it usable. Let's scale it back so you can look at some of those specific points of data that you can start to see affect that cost of quality, right? Again, these are just simply little reporting boxes or little reporting widgets. So before I go through some real-world examples, I do want to lay out and take this opportunity just to give you a brief background of what you're looking at SafetyChain. We've spent almost 8 years and tens of millions of dollars of building something. I'm going to break it down to one slide, and I think each of you will find this important. As I mentioned, it lives in the cloud. There's two main pillars to it. It's a document repository. We mentioned earlier, you have documents today, SOPs, standard operating procedures, right, PRPs, things that talk about the data you're going to go capture for your quality program, for your food safety program. And that's the main pillar of SafetyChain is that it is a document management system. The secondary pillar is that it's a data repository. The idea that you have all of this data, have it live in a single source of truth, right? One database of record, so you can start to pull that information, you can start to report on that information, and I'll show you some examples of that today. But also very important as you're running a process, as you're capturing that data, is the idea is if that data comes in and something's outside of specification or outside of attribute, it would be really good to start a corrective action workflow or start to generate alerts and notifications out of the system, right? Text messages, emails, hey, what's going on here right now? Starting to communicate out that data as well. So not only can the data become information via reports, but now all of a sudden you're analyzing that data in real time, right? You're starting to generate out communications to the applicable individuals, as well as scheduling. Very important when you talk about quality, you typically have some type of sample scheduling component. Every hour you're going to go take a check, every 2 hours if you're running this product, every 30 minutes you're doing certain organoleptic checks or whatever it might be. The idea that within our system you can also schedule those checks and make sure that they're actually occurring and taking place, right? And then finally, I've mentioned this a couple times, a centralized area where you can go find reports, analytics, and pull that information back at your fingertips quickly, right? So that's the SafetyChain platform in a nutshell. We've also built in, and we won't focus a lot on this today, but we've also built in the GFSI code schemas, right? DRC, SQF, FSQA, 22000, Primus, GFS, all reside within the application, allowing our customers to focus on those audits as well as starting to capture that data, right? We also comply by the regulatory requirements around unalterable date and timestamps and electronic signatures. Important to note, and I mentioned this as I go through the demo here in a moment, but what we'll then do is use this baseline technology to configure this for your specific program, for your specific process, right? So if some of you see the examples here today, you might think, well, does that mean I have to have 10 questions for my QA check? No. Does that mean I have to have 5 questions for my audit? No, it doesn't. Rather, what we'll do is we'll look at your programs with you, and we'll take those things that you're doing either on paper or on Excel spreadsheets or wherever it is, and we'll actually configure the system, giving you access to that real-time data reporting, allowing you to be audit ready, and also helping you with that supplier management and customer compliance, right? Very important. So how does this all work? How do we bring it all together? Let's look at just a couple quick examples. And again, I appreciate you folks for hanging on here. So I'm going to come back to the home page, right? And we're going to talk about a couple things that might happen within the system. Well, I'm going to come over here to this FSQA tab for a moment, and I'm going to show you something that hopefully looks a little bit familiar with you, and I'm going to use one specific example here. I'm going to come to our FSQA process automation area. The idea with the FSQA process automation is that you have certain checks, certain tasks, certain things that are being done today in your facility. And I'm going to concentrate here on this flour analysis for a moment. The idea with, so let's say I'm processing flour, right, and I'm doing an analysis. I'm going to show you what this form looks like in a moment. As I mentioned, the system has a scheduling component to it. The idea that on certain time intervals, someone should go do this analysis. Someone should go take these checks and start to provide that data real time into a system. Many of you today are doing this on clipboard, pen and paper, Excel spreadsheet, wherever it might live. And we'll even talk a little bit more in a moment about how this data might even come from a piece of equipment, right? An NIR device, a FOSS machine, a fax machine. But the idea is within SafetyChain, you can actually start that scheduling component, and this allows our system to generate tasks to end users. It also allows us to make sure that your tasks are being completed as your program states, right? So every 30 minutes, Dave needs to go do a check of this flour, right? The idea is that the system can make sure those checks are being done. So I'm going to come back here to this page for a second, and I'm going to actually create one of these tasks ad hoc. So this flour analysis here, I'm going to hit the create button. And many of you will go, well, what's that create button even mean? Basically, I'm just doing something ad hoc here for the benefit of this demonstration, and it's saying, hey, there's been a task that's created. Now, how do we take, your programs and your processes and those papers and pen and paper and start to get this data to be actionable, make it become information, right? Not just data. Well, the main tool that we've seen be quite successful in facilities, in retail environments, in you name it, right? Out in the field, is our mobile device at SafetyChain. So I've been focusing here on our web environment today, right? So far to this point, I've been clicking through a web application that many of you on this call, this might be where you access the system, right? You have your home page, you see your reports. Remember, you can see these trends and charts. But where this data is typically coming from, it's coming from the floor, it's coming from the store, it's coming from a field, it's coming from an inspector at the port, right? So the idea here is we've created a mobile application. And I'm going to pull up a different view here on your screen. You'll see this is a mobile device that I'm holding in my hand. And what SafetyChain has created, both available in the Android Play Store, or the Google Play Store, I should say, as well as the Apple Store, is the SafetyChain mobile app, right? So I'm going to click on the SafetyChain mobile app, and I'm going to refresh this for a moment. And what you'll see here is I have some jobs and tasks and forms that I might need to be completed. I'm going to focus here for a second on these tasks. And I'm going to come in here, and here's that flower analysis that I just created, right? You can see 6:25, 1:56 Eastern Time this was created. What we've done here is I now have a task to complete this form. This form is asking me to capture different results, right? You can see I need to capture moisture and protein and ash and pH and color. You might also notice on your screen that these fields that I'm capturing may have specific attributes or specifications that need to be validated against or verified against. These could be customer specific, these could be supplier specific, these could be product specific. Completely up to you as an organization, but what our tool is allowing you to do is go through and start entering in that information. So instead of writing it down, having someone go key the information, as we talked about, it's vital to have this information available as quickly as possible. Right? The idea here is not only is a person entering in this information and going through it, but let me show you something else here. If I enter in something that is outside of range or outside of value, you may have noticed these blue check boxes and even a little red one that might pop up. So here, for example, my color needs to be a minimum of 11. What happens if I enter in 12? Or I'm sorry, a minimum of 11, so I should probably go the other way. What happens if I enter in 10, right? You'll see the system actually opens up a corrective action. Maybe there's a task I need to take right now in my hands as that end user, right? So the idea that you can start to provide that instant feedback, that instant analysis of the data, right? Let's say it's correct, that's cool. It was actually 11, 11 is great. There were no metal fragments. There were no metal fragments, and I'm gonna submit this and enter it through, right? Great, now I have access to that data. As that information flows in, remember, it now becomes available on screens like this where you can start to see it process it, right, as it flows through the system. We have customers who will actually put these up on monitors within facilities, right? Let me pull back for a second and give you another example. One of the other things we see pretty commonly is the idea that not only are you capturing quality metrics, but there are certain things that happen on your floor that would be really nice to have an ad hoc form to capture, right, like scrap. Hey, what was the type of the scrap, right? What was the category? Where was the processing step where it was scrapped, right? What was the reason for it? All of a sudden, you start to have this information. How many pounds was it, right? It was 15 pounds. This information is now all of a sudden available to you. And oh, by the way, because this is a native application, you don't have to be connected. Many of you will say, well, my facility is quite large, or my store doesn't have Wi-Fi throughout, or my dock where I receive in the goods from my suppliers doesn't have Wi-Fi. Because it's a native application, you can utilize this anywhere. And as soon as you're reconnected, the data flows up to the cloud. It also enables you to do fun stuff like, hey, on this scrap, I'm actually going to take a picture. Here's my desk today, right? I'm going to take a photograph of what I'm looking at with that scrap. And now you have direct observation that's actually associated with that check within the system, right? All rolling up through the cloud, right? Last example here from the side of the mobile device. Think about your inspections you do as they're coming in. You have an inbound inspection. As I look at this list, I'm assuming every one of you at some point has some type of an inspection you're doing as things are coming into your facility, your store, whatever it might be. The idea you might capture a supplier of who it's coming in from, right? It's important to have supplier quality, right? You might have different brands. You might be capturing at that point a check, right? A weight check, a net weight check. Was there the proper labeling on it? Were the cook instructions on it, right? All that kind of stuff. Was the appearance acceptable, good, unacceptable? Now you have data that you can start to track, in this case, against your supplier, right? So cost of quality, we don't really talk about just within the four walls of your processing. Many of you I see on here are retailers. It'd be really nice to know about the level of quality you're getting from your suppliers. And many of you are most likely capturing some of this information via a pen, via a piece of paper, via a clipboard, right? So back to data-rich, information-poor, the idea that you can start to capture those things like average fat counts, right? Average appearance for a supplier, right? Have things, are they typically good? Are they typically bad? Do they typically fail? Where does that go, right? So last piece of this, so mobile apps obviously are here. I'm going to come back to this tool. The idea that not only can you see things on your home pages that are updated, our system can even generate out alerts and notifications. So back to that flour example that I had, notice here that, hey, the pH value was too high, right? I pulled it for further analysis down on the floor. You can see the remaining portions of that check, right? Now we're talking about generating notifications, communications out in real time, text messages, emails, right? So the idea that when all of this data can become available to become information and to become a tool for notification, that's really where we're starting to see the value of the application, right? Pulling it all together into one place, whether that's on a home page where I can see recent corrective actions or recent failures, right? Here's that same flour check that I was just showing you an email for. It showed up on my home page, right, as well. And I can drill down into that. I can see additional detail from within the system on what was processed, what wasn't processed, you know, and what those results were, who did the check. Things are color-coded within the system. You can see orange is borderline, green's good, red was the thing that failed. I can see the specification limits and the maximums and minimums, even the borderline components. Our system can even open up real-time corrective actions for update, right, and track those to completion. So all of that being said, you have these home pages, you have trend charts as we talked about. The idea that one last thing that I like to show here is, you know, now that you have this data living in one repository, it's not always a consistent report. We've had customers who have processed prior to using technology for 20, 50 years, and they did the same checks all the time. And in using our platform, in less than a year, they'll understand that 2 of the checks they've done for 50 years were just not applicable. It didn't mean anything. It didn't mean anything to cost of quality. It didn't mean anything for food safety. And they actually stopped doing the checks, right? But the idea that you can actually start to have access to this information, you can start to run reports on that. Your boss, your executives come to you and say, okay, well, tell me everything that's going on with this product, right? The idea that quite quickly you can come into a system like this now, and I'm going to pull a compliance report for a specific product. Hey, how about this? So I'm going to pull my compliance over here to a series component, and I'm going to drop down and I'm going to pull all my products here into this categorical component down at the bottom, right? And it's going to give me a compliance percentage for all my products. That doesn't show me a lot of data yet, but let's look specifically at this 34500 product. So I'm going to filter down on that product, and you know what I want to see? I want to see all the checks that we do against this and the things that might be outside of realm, right? So I'm going to pull my analytes down here. I'm going to open this up so you can see it a little bit better. Now I can see all of the checks, whether they're food safety, whether they're quality checks that I'm doing against this specific product with the results. And if I want to, I can start to do counts on these. How often does this happen? What are the results around it, right? And these types of reports are now readily available at your fingertips, and I think that's the key element of SafetyChain. We're taking you out of that data-rich, information-poor environment, and we're combining that data into a single repository, a single record, a single place where you can come access that information, pull it out quickly, see it real time as it's being trended, right? As it's charting through your process and giving you access to that information to make business decisions and hopefully help you lower some of that cost of quality, right? So with that, Barbara, I'm going to give it back to you. I think I'm up on my time and probably went a little bit over, but I apologize for that. Hopefully it helped. And thanks for everybody's time today.
Great. Thank you so much. We're going to come back into full screen. Let's see, Jill, I think I might need to get the ball back here. And if there's any questions for Dave or anything that you thought of for Lamont, we can put those in here now. Give it another minute. I'm going to go back to this information page, and I think we're good. So with that, thank you everybody so much for joining us today. We hope you found the information valuable. Lamont, fabulous, fabulous job. Dave, great as always. And everybody have a really great afternoon or morning if you're still in California here. So So we hope to see everybody next month at another Safety Chain Tech Talk. Thanks, everyone.